There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Wow, fascinating stuff in hour one.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff with all these jinxes. And you know, baseball players, hockey, all these guys, the thing that I see that's so crazy is the fact that, you know, so many of these guys are so religious about certain things that they do before games.
They're a cowardly and superstitious lot.
That they are.
Sports heroes.
Thank you all for tuning in. You're listening live to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show right now. We're live on the air. And if you have questions for our next guest, if you have questions for Tim and I during the show, you can join us in our live chat where we're able to take you in and be able to bring your questions up and out in the open. Hopefully you'll join us there and you know, interact with the group here. I'd love to have you be a part of the show with us. Our guest for hour two, we've had the opportunity to work with a few different times at UnivCon and seen her at a Dragon Con. A fascinating speaker, great author, and just a treat to have back on the show. So let's welcome to the Darkness on the Edge of Town, Michelle Belanger. Good evening, Michelle.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Tim. How you both doing?
Doing great. Thanks a lot for joining us again.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm going to rub in the fact that I'm calling in from Atlanta, Georgia, where it is not snowing.
You're miserable. Well, you know, I'm glad you brought up Atlanta, Georgia again. I want to mention real quickly, I had some emails after the last comment that I made before we went to break on the last hour about the Patrick Burns Ghost Stock event. We are going to help out Patrick with Ghost Stock this year. As a big fan and advocate of it, we are one of the sponsors. We are going to make it available for everybody that signs up for Ghost Stock and goes to Ghost Stock out in Savannah, Georgia. You can you're entered into a drawing, an immediate drawing. We're going to draw one winner out of the group that'll be out there, and that winner gets an opportunity to go 2 passes to the Stanley Hotel retreat in November 2008 at the Stanley Hotel in beautiful Estes Park, Colorado. And you'll also get the free hotel stay at the Stanley with us for the event. So, yes, it's not for everybody that joins up. Not everybody wins. It is one person that'll be drawn out of the mix, but it's a great opportunity. It's around a $900 to $1,000 package that you're going to be entered in for the chance to win. So, Atlanta, Georgia, boy, you've had a busy schedule, Michelle. Every time I talk to you, you're in some other foreign city and doing another talk. What are you doing out in Atlanta?
I was down in Atlanta, actually, for a special convention of folks in the vampire community, and right before that I was at Purdue University in Indiana, and I'm going to be finishing things up by speaking in Cincinnati at the annual meeting of the Academy of Criminal Justice on March 15th on the Gothic subculture, school dress codes, and freedom of expression, and its relevance to criminal investigations, violence in schools, things like that.
Well, I guess that's kind of cool and impressive. Tim and I are going to be opening up a hamburger Happy Hut. Mm-hmm. We'll be there cutting the ribbon for the opening at that.
Oh, cool.
That's it. That's all we get.
Are you pulling my leg?
Yes, I'm pulling your leg. So you get to do all these prestigious things with crime and punishment and schools and lectures, and Tim and I, we get to open up hamburger joints.
Well, actually, the event I was down here at, we had a fellow who's in the vampire community who is a homicide detective in somewhere here in Georgia. I don't want to out him or anything, and he was also talking about subcultures and different belief systems, and when you are a police officer going into somebody's house and you find something ooky, and how you can kind of separate fact from fiction, and just your fear response from things to just having to deal with people, just the people, without judging.
Well, now let's mention real quickly, because that's a good point. You talk a lot about tolerance and understanding and judging, and people automatically, when you hear that you're part of the vampire subculture that's going on out there right now, a lot of people automatically jump right to the Bram Stoker blood-sucking vampires.
Oh, yeah, they go, eek!
Right,
or
exactly.
She's some sort of flake in black.
Right. Right. Well, we know that to be true, but I mean that. But you're not out drinking blood. You're not out killing virgins and sacrificing goats to the god Ra or anything silly, right? I mean,
no.
This is the subculture. It's just more about how do you explain the vampire subculture and what's going on in that field?
My participation in it is I'm someone who teaches on energy and psychic vampirism and how to defend yourself against them if you have those who don't behave themselves, but also for people who have this capacity, how to learn how to exercise it in an ethical fashion, how to not be a predator, how to get it under control. The vampire subculture itself is made up mostly of individuals who, for one reason or another, identify with the vampire. Quite a lot of them, especially at this convention, are people who are psychic vampires like myself. There's something in their makeup that they need to regularly and actively take human vital energy, and the community itself advocates ethical practice, so we only take from willing participants, willing donors.
Well, that's my question there, Michelle. Can you take, if I'm not willing to give, I mean, can you actually sit there and kind of siphon off somebody's energy stream without them knowing it?
They'll know it. It's classic psychic attack. Taking energy from someone without their permission, connecting to them on that level is psychic attack. You'll notice it because you feel almost immediately uncomfortable, maybe headachy or dizzy, a little nauseous. You might feel literally like, invaded, like someone in the room is attacking you, and you can't quite put your finger on why you feel this sort of fear response. And a lot of the education that I do for paranormal communities and occult communities is how to protect yourself against that because, well, it takes a thief to catch a thief. So knowing how the mechanics work, I can teach people how best to protect themselves from people who are assholes about it.
All right. Well, that's good. Because we do run into that a lot, and we're learning more about protection at our events that we do. Psychic protection and religious protection and all these different forms. Before we get into the psychic dream walking, can you maybe walk a couple people through what are some things that we can do to protect ourselves from people like you, Michelle, that can feed off of our energy without us knowing it? How can we protect ourselves so that that isn't happening, or at least we can, kind of stave it off a little bit?
First and foremost, don't have a victim mentality. It's the same thing as if you were walking across a darkened parking lot at night. If you act afraid, if you telegraph to a predator that you are a victim, you are more likely to be attacked. So be confident in yourself and do not be afraid. Don't go into it expecting to be attacked. If you feel that you are under attack, the first thing is to try to establish who may be attacking you. Most psychic vampires need to be at least looking at you, like in the same room. But as a general rule, it's probably somebody you just talked to recently or you may still be talking to. You want to break any physical contact they might have with you, put them at least at an arm's length physically. If you think that they're in a specific room, try to move out of that room, put distance between you and them. And that's just addressing it on a physical level. On a psychic level, there's a technique called shielding, and it's actually fairly simple. And even if you're not psychic, go through the exercise, and that will really help to protect you. And all it is you imagine that you are building a wall, a bubble, a brick wall, steel doors, doesn't matter, something that protects you from everything outside of you, that keeps your energy in and the rest of the world out. Okay. And the most basic shield is you picture literally a bubble of energy all around you, and you enforce that with your will. If you go through the visualization, even if you don't think that you are psychic or have a handle on this sort of stuff, as long as you have confidence that you can keep this person out, it will help to keep them out. It really comes down to a battle of wills when you're talking about energy.
Well, now, that brings up a good question. So if you don't know that you're being attacked, but you kind of go around with this static bubble around yourselves, aren't you kind of draining your own energy by focusing on having that all the time?
You don't want to have it all the time. Certainly you don't want to have a really static one around you all the time, because especially if you're psychic, that'll start to feel really claustrophobic. Okay. If it's keeping everything out, I believe that psychic energy is what carries the information to us that we perceive from the world around us. Empathy, telepathy, all of our psychic impressions are coming to us through this subtle energy and our exchange with it in the world around us. So we don't want to have a big static wall around us at all times. Now, if you are somebody who is like empathic or really hypersensitive, like way too psychic for your own good, a secondary technique is called filtering. And rather than having an impermeable wall, an impenetrable barrier, what you want to do is train yourself to kind of have a filter. literally, like, gauze, cotton, just something around you that makes it so that the energy around you has a little bit of distance to travel before it gets directly to you. So if it's really, really loud, it's kind of like, tuning things down before it gets to you. So if you are in a crowd, or if you're in a house that is really haunted with very negative energy, really dark presences, you aren't immediately, like, overwhelmed by that. You can still pick up the impressions, you can still process them, but they're not so loud that you can't concentrate through it. Think of it as kind of like putting cotton in your ears.
Okay.
You're not making yourself deaf.
Let me ask you about that. Right, you're not making yourself deaf, you're just dampening it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Michelle. I go to all these haunted locations, and I'll be standing there in a group, and people are like, "Oh my God, you just feel that shift in the air? Oh God, it's like electricity. My arms are tingling. I feel
and you
nothing.
Probably pick up nothing.
Nothing. But I will say,
yeah.
when I'm in a crowd, I've had other people say, "Well, Dave, you probably have empathic tendencies," because I don't like big crowds, because I feel like this form of chaos around me. Not even if it's like the crowd can be docile, but I just have this feeling like I'm being bombarded by a gazillion thoughts and emotions at once. How can I pick up on that? But standing in the most haunted location on the planet, I feel no buzz, and everybody else around me is like, "Oh my God, do you feel it?" "Yeah, I feel that." "Oh my God, yeah, this is totally it." And they're all in one area, and they're all cluster feeling something, and I've got nothing.
Well, first I'm going to tell you, I like you so much because you remind me of my best friend, Jay, in build and in your energy. And he's someone who very naturally shields, like to the point where he doesn't even realize it. He had to sort of learn how to take them down. And that shielding protects him from a lot of the weird ooky stuff that you'll get across, like in a haunted house or something. Now, probably the hardest thing to explain, because we don't have all of the words for it yet, is when we say energy. I walk into a crowd, I feel the energy. I walk into a house, I feel the energy. Energy implies that it's all the same thing, but I think we're really talking about are many different frequencies. And some people tune into one or another or a band of them better than others do. So some people are more inclined to be sensitive to the energy of spirits and the energy of haunted houses, and they may not pick up on the emotions of other people. Some people are more tuned into the emotions of people, their telepathic stuff, and it will vary from person to person. There are some people I know who they can't pick up any other psychic expressions except like natural impressions. You put them in a forest or a natural environment, and they can kind of get a vibe from the land. But everything else is just white noise to them. They don't pick anything up at all.
Could it be because the living are more powerful energy right now, so I can sense that, and maybe because my shields are up, or because I'm just not as strong in that much of the force, if you will, when I'm in a haunted house with dead people and things around me, because their energy is not as amped up and as ripe as living, that could be what's holding me back?
I think you're more grounded in the real world, and people would be a more direct threat to you, so you're picking up them first, because, they are more tangible, more real, here and now, and I think that's kind of where your focus is more tipped. Especially somebody who's got all those shields. You go into a haunted house, a spirit really can't do anything to you. A person you might need to focus on, because if they go and do something kind of crazy, you need to know about that.
Sure. Well, could you give me some advice on this then? I, like so many of our listeners, want to have more paranormal experiences at the locations that I go to. Okay. However, I want to remain shielded so that I'm not, I'm not getting things attached to me. I'm not getting things following me home. How can I lower the shields? How can I lower the shields halfway, Captain? Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a way, like, so I can let more in, but keep it at a safe buffer where it's not attaching itself to me, right?
What you're going to want to do first is to find a place that has things that other people have picked up, a consistently haunted place, but a place that is not dangerous or threatening, a place that you feel relatively safe in.
Okay.
So what's there isn't going to attack you right out. And honestly, you should practice first on taking them all down completely. Because you know how you have to kind of figure out your way on a pendulum swing? Sometimes just human nature, you have to go all the way from one extreme to the other in order to find the middle.
Right.
I think that you would need to literally sit down, if you know how to meditate or kind of learn a little basics of meditation, literally go through the steps in your head of picturing yourself in a fortress and deconstructing that fortress wall by wall by wall until you are standing totally naked in your head to everything around you. But make sure it's a place that's safe. and then
Any place I'm
experiment
naked
with-
is not safe, Michelle. Just let me say that for the record.
in your head.
Oh, not even there.
First comes love, then comes marriage, and then
Comes me and the baby carriage them. I know,
well,
this is icky.
It reminds
Number
me of a
7.
bad music video.
All right, so you strip down all these barriers.
Strip everything away and see if, naked figuratively, you can pick anything up. Now, if you're someone who's naturally shielded, that's really not going to be comfortable. I mean, you will feel very vulnerable, and it will take a tremendous effort to literally get to the core, to get all of those barriers away.
But as a
You will have
psychic
barriers you
vampire,
don't even realize you've got there.
right? As a psychic vampire, and with the abilities and things you know about, though, do you really recommend anybody pull down all the barriers?
As many as you can in a safe place.
Okay.
If you know that there's nothing around you that's going to prey on you, in a safe place, it's something that you can experiment with.
Okay.
I really advocate learning by doing. You almost can't. Half of the stuff I can't write in a book. I mean, I can try to explain it, but it's the actual hands-on practice where people, because there's so much individual variation in how you pick stuff up, how your perceptions are telegraphed to you, how your brain interprets them, that you have to just learn by doing, practice with that, and then practice putting up just one barrier. And if you still feel way too vulnerable, put up another one, and find a happy medium. Now, I actually, as much as a psychic vampire as I am, had some fairly significant shields, almost like, personal armor that I walked around with. People kept telling me, "Oh, you're shielded around this particular place," and I'm like, I don't know. I'm a psychic vampire. I'm open to all of this energy. But I started to realize that there was kind of a core part of me that, especially if somebody was trying to read my energy, they just couldn't get there. And I've had open heart surgery, and I pictured it almost literally as like a chest piece of armor that I had on the very core of me. And I'll put my hands on my scar where they cracked my rib cage down the middle, and I will envision this armor as if it were like that rib cage, and I'm cracking it back open. So like the light of me, the core of me opens up just enough to like let that out, to be completely unshielded, at least in a small area. And it's not something I do all the time. It's usually if I'm teaching somebody how to read energy bodies and I'm using myself as a practice dummy, I have to do that. Otherwise, people pick pretty much nothing up throughout my torso.
Okay, well, that seems like it would be opening up for a lot of pain. And that's like a very vulnerable spot, though, isn't it, for you to actually open up?
It is really vulnerable. And it's a question of, how vulnerable are you willing to be for the level of perception you want to go for. It's been my experience that somebody who has energy like you do, you don't like being that vulnerable at all.
Right.
Something in the back of your brain, your reptilian hindbrain is always sort of threat assessing, is always ready to rumble if some threat enters your little world. And so it's hard to get past some of those initial barriers, things that you've carried with you since you were a kid.
Yeah,
but
definitely,
really,
I can see that, sure.
Yeah, practicing with it and trying to find a middle ground that psychologically you're comfortable with, that still allows all the outside energy to kind of like get in, so it's not so completely muted by all those layers that you've got up.
All right, that'll be the good way to start up with learning how to get through these barriers and maybe open myself up in a safe way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
safe.
We have to take our first
predators.
break here real quick. Let me take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll discuss more about energy and about psychic dream walking in a few moments. You're listening to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show with our guest, Michelle Belanger.
We thought El Chupacabra meant the cup of coffee in Spanish.
Me llamo Hr.2 Especial. ¿Cómo está el yay?
What you talking about, Willis?
Shows you what we know. Stay tuned. There's more to come from the Darkness on the Edge of Town. The smell of voodoo hangs in the air. Either that or Dave and Tim had the 7-bean salad for dinner.
Don't nobody go in the bathroom for about 45 minutes. Somebody open the window.
Welcome back to the darkness, or whatever is hanging in the air, on the edge of town.
Welcome back to the show. We're talking to author Michelle Belanger, and she is talking to us a little bit about how you were able to shield yourself, how you can remove shielding so that you can experience more things in the paranormal. And you know what? One question that always comes up to me, Michelle, at our live events is, what's the difference between the energy field around us and our aura? Or are they the same thing?
They are largely the same thing. The aura is something like your energetic skin. You've got energy around you, and there's a point at which it sort of stops and ceases being your personal energy. If somebody can perceive that energy field, it's pretty much the same thing. The only difference that I would say is a Kirlian photograph generally claims to photograph the aura, and it's really more like the bioelectrical charge, like kind of amplified from your hands or your fingers in terms of the plate. But when somebody is talking about what they're observing around a person with their psychic sense, it is the aura and the energy field should more or less be the same thing.
Okay. Now,
in my opinion.
Right. Now, the auras can constantly change, right? And as an energy person, do you also work in energy healing at all?
Yeah, actually I do quite a lot.
So do you actually physically see people's auras, or do you psychically sense their auras?
I have never physically seen colors for auras. I can see physically with my eyes around people something like that shimmery heat rising off of a pavement. It almost looks like gray and misty, but it's never had a color to it. It almost looks like a vague disturbance in the air around the person.
Sure.
That's what I can see with my physical eyes. If I start tuning into that and tuning into their energy, I get further impressions that are not physically, visually based. Frequently, since I'm a very visual thinker, they manifest to me in a visual fashion, but it can be taste, sensations. It varies fairly radically from person to person. I have a tendency of almost like pushing too hard when I'm perceiving like that, so I'll often start getting emotions, sometimes telepathic stuff, memories from people too. A lot of my psychic abilities were I had to backwards engineer how to like turn them off, how to not run around picking everything up.
Well, now that's interesting, because I've heard that some of our memories are actually stored in the aura and energy field around us. Do you find that, as a psychic vampire, when you're siphoning off, are you pulling parts of people's experiences and suddenly you'll have these flashes or thoughts or memories? I mean, it's got to be like place memory, right? Or like, what do they call it? Psychometry.
Frequently I will end up getting memories. There was a person who acted as my donor for many years who, the first time I connected to her energy, I got a very clear image of a farm. There was a pond, there were chickens, and there was a man in coveralls coming toward whoever the visual person was, whoever the first person was that I was kind of seeing through their eyes. And she did not recognize it. She was in therapy. And about 3 years into the therapy, it turned out that a chicken farm she'd been raised on was where a fairly traumatic event happened. And this memory that I'd been picking up, that I knew it ended in something really bad as this man came toward her, that was there. And I was picking up basically the first few moments of what ended up being a trauma she had suppressed for most of her adult life. And that's not uncommon. I get a lot of stuff. I also do Reiki on people, and I've found that as you work on knots and blockages in certain areas, it will often release suppressed memories, sometimes past life memories as well, and as it releases them for the person, I'll often get glimpses of it.
Now, can you clear those out? Like, you're doing a psychic cleansing on me, and you're doing Reiki, and you find one of these little nasty nuggets of suppressed memory. Can you help to sweep that out and clean it out of our memory banks kind of thing, and not make it a block anymore? Or does it almost have to be reopened, like a knot in your shoulder being rubbed out? Does that toxin have to be pushed back out and the memory to be released in order for it to be accepted and moved on past?
I can unlock it and open it for the person. The person will still have to process everything connecting to that memory.
So there's no way to just kind of pull it out and throw it away without them really knowing that, or reminding them of it?
Yeah, there's no easy way.
Okay.
From all of my healing experiences, when you tap into something like that is causing a blockage, that is tied to a certain chakra that's causing all these problems for the person, when you open it up, there's this initial flash for the person, and usually there's several weeks of processing all of the emotions and things that are tied to what you just unlocked in them. I've not found a way to surgically excise it from someone and allow them to just sort of like get over it easily.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I found that there are no easy answers to the world. Like, you can't just take a pill and make it go away.
No.
Energy work is the same thing. So go on.
Well, that's just depressing to hear. Damn it! I wanted the silver bullet. I needed the quick fix.
It would be great, but I've had to do everything the hard way, and I think that ends up, in the long run, making people more functional anyway, because then you're dealing with the problem. If you just pulled it away, the problem essentially would still be there.
Right.
So what was your next question?
Well, my next question I want to get into is dealing with the psychic dream walking. Now, this is something that's really interested me, and that's why I finally been going through all the boxes and boxes and boxes of books I've been given over the last 2 years. And I remember when I got this book, I set it aside. I wanted to read it, and because, as you know, in this field, we're inundated with different books and theories and things popping up all the time, and it totally slipped past me until I was actually looking for a book on astral projection for a friend of mine. And I came across the book again. I was like, yeah, God, I want to get into this because, see, I deal with a lot of lucid dreams. I have dreams almost nightly. I can actually remember most of my dreams, and when I'm in a dream, it'll be a very dreamlike state, and then all of a sudden at some point I'm like, yeah, okay, this is a dream. That's cool. And then I can kind of be a part of it. Even in scary situations, I'm able to kind of start to control. Not like the Freddy Krueger Dream Master movie where all of a sudden I'm throwing fireballs and leaping all over. Whereas I can fly very easily in my dreams, I do have very lucid dreams that are still very realistic to me. And I wanted to find out more about that and more about what you do. Now, what is the difference between psychic dream walking and astral projection? Can you differentiate that for us?
I spent almost 3 chapters that got cut out of the book because they were way too heady and theoretical, trying to clearly define the difference. Basically, dream walking is the intersection of out-of-body experience and lucid dreaming. And the main difference between psychic dream walking and astral projection is one of technique and location, like where you are aiming to travel. In astral projection, as most of your listeners probably know, you use various techniques in order to ultimately project a second body or a second self or a point of consciousness to either explore your immediate vicinity and the world around you almost from the perspective of a spirit, or to use it to launch to these astral realms that have a special sort of reality of their own, outer reaches, other dimensions, things like that. But in general, when you go through this process, the sense is you are projecting something out of your body and going into outer places. Either your room to walk around like Robert Monroe did when he had his first spontaneous experience, or as like Dion Fortune and others, to go out suddenly into these vast astral realms to access the Akashic records and such like that. Now, with dream walking, the primary thing is you feel first like you are descending into your own consciousness, and that's why the medium of dreams is sort of like the first gate in order to let yourself go to somewhere else. Mm-hmm. The ancient Greeks had a notion that the dream space, the realm of dreams, and this is actually a fairly widely held opinion in the ancient world, the realm of dreams was at once imaginary and real. And you could go to the realm of dreams, and it also intersected on its edges with the realm of spirits and the dead and with the realm of the gods. This is where a lot of the ancient traditions of, the king going up into the top of the ziggurat to have a dream in order to commune with the god. This is where this comes from. They had the ideas you could go to the dream realm looking for the god and looking for your answer, and because the barrier between the two is hazy at a place, you could, through proper conscious dreaming, find a way to cross over into the realm of the gods from your dream space. So the main difference is you are going inside, internally, first into an area that really is your own consciousness, and then using that as a gate, as a liminal space where you traverse to a next realm, to another realm. Now,
there was a movie in the 80s called Dreamscape. I don't know if you remember that movie. Is this a fantastic movie?
Oh, yeah, I had a great time watching that.
With Dennis Quaid, right, where he was actually able to enter people's dreams to almost help them psychologically deal with nightmares and issues that they were having in their dreams, to help break through these barriers. Is that essentially what you're talking about, is that ability of entering other people's dreams and manipulating what's going on around them?
The ultimate goal is to enter, to go into your dream space, to use it as a gate into somebody else's dream space, and engage in something a little bit more active and personal than just dream telepathy, to actually communicate with people, to meet up in the dream space and use that realm that is at once imaginary and real to facilitate long-distance, out-of-body contact. So you have, your dream self, and you construct a gate. In the case of actual lucid dreaming, if you're in a complete dream state, you create a little space that is your dream space, your focal point in the dream realm, and you create a gate there, or a doorway, a portal, whatever symbol is going to work best. And you open that up and will it to lead you to person A or person B, your best friend who lives in California, you don't get to see all the time, and you cross over from your dream space into their dream space, because all of these realms intersect in a way that is, as I found, impossible to map or even really adequately. I sort of started to try to do like the shamanic view of the world, where you've got like the middle realm and then the subtle reality and the celestial realm and the nether realm, and I just kind of gave up because it gets so very complicated. Each person's dream space is essentially a little world of its own. And then on the edges, it can cross over into other things. It can cross over into the realm of spirits, just proved by the number of spirit contacts people have, especially death-announcing dreams, where somebody dies and you have a dream where they say goodbye, and you wake up, you look at the time, and the next day you find out that they died right around that time.
Right. Now, that's something that Tim has dealt with here. Tim, I don't know if you want to chime in, because this is part of what got you involved in the paranormal, right? You had these experiences where you were being visited by people that were about to cross over or had crossover.
And interestingly enough, Michelle, there's an incident, actually when my grandfather passed, almost to the exact minute, where I had a dream that there was a star that was, instead of a shooting star across the sky, it was a star that was shooting from Earth up into the heavens. And it was at that point that I woke up and I knew that my grandfather passed away. So what I had done is I'd walked into the living room and I sat by my phone, and sure enough, no more than 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was my mom.
There was a lot of research done in the 60s and early 70s at the Maimonides Dream Institute on dream telepathy, just looking into how our mental space crosses over, and how some of us can almost use that to contact one another, not just in terms of ideas or images in telepathy, almost as if sometimes an avatar, an eidolon of this person can cross into your mental space, appear to you, talk to you, and then cross back out. It's very hard to pin it down as classic out-of-body experience, and yet it's still somehow moving into inner reaches of outer space, going out of body in order to move into other people's minds and move into this noumenal realm that we all seem to tap into, that seems to exist, and our mind is the gateway. Death-announcing dreams are probably one of the most common psychic experiences that people relate. And it's such a widespread phenomenon, and because it really stands out, over and over and over again, people are like, I woke up after that dream, it stuck in my head, I looked at the clock. Almost always the person ends up looking at the clock. It's how they can verify, almost to the minute, when the person died. Right. There's this overwhelming knowledge.
Now, do you believe that doing that? And I'm sorry, Tim. When you're having these death announcement dreams and these things are coming through, do you believe that that's because on their way out, that's the easiest portal to touch you in and get to you through, is through that dream state, because your mind is kind of in that state of is it alpha or beta, where your brain waves are at that point in your dream stage, when you're able to when the communication seems to take place?
I believe it's alpha, and yeah, I do believe that is where you're most receptive. I think that almost all of us have some level of psychic ability, and we process the information on an unconscious level. The mind consciousness is many-layered. We have, and the smallest part of it is the part that we live in every day, our actual conscious mind that micromanages reality. And then we have the subconscious, and then the unconscious mind, which is this vast realm of dreams and mythic symbols. Carl Jung wrote pretty extensively about it, and there's some ideas that it actually connects everybody, that this collective unconscious is sort of a mental realm, but also a space unto itself, where all of humanity's dreams, myths, stories have an existence. And all of us are kind of like computers tapped into the internet. If the internet would be the collective unconscious. we can all access it.
Almost like the movie The Matrix.
Yeah, almost
Okay.
like, yeah. So when you're asleep, you relinquish your consciousness, which micromanages everything, which is very lineal. And as you descend into the unconscious reaches, you are more receptive to all of the information that is coming into your system all the time. You don't have your rational mind to just discount it or to focus on the really obvious physical input that you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
You are more in contact with the part that is constantly letting this flow of information through. So when you sleep, when you dream, noumenal experiences, psychic experiences are a lot easier to get through to you because the barriers are gone. You're more open to it, you're more receptive, and you're less likely to clamp down that micromanaging consciousness and just focus on, like, the Jeep I'm standing in front of and, looking at the physical things. The physical world can be very distracting, especially since all of these impressions tend to be pretty subtle.
Well, now, how do we know when we're trying to do these psychic dream walking? Do you tell, do you call me up and you say, hey, Dave, I'm coming to visit you tonight? Or do you just do it subtly and then you're there and then you contact the person to see if they had any memory of that occurring? Because I would think that if you're making the announcement up front, because even doing this, I was thinking, boy, this is exciting. I know I do a lot of lucid dreaming, and I know that I project during my dreams, and I know a lot of these things occur. I'd really like to do an experiment and have Michelle maybe try to enter my dream tonight and see if we can communicate and maybe report on it next week. But then, in fact, are you creating your own false positive because I've now planted it into my subconscious that I want to connect with you?
Yeah.
I guess the only way to make it
you might,
sense would be as if I wrote my own blog at midnight tomorrow and you wrote your blog at midnight, we didn't speak, and both posted it at the same time and see if we had the exact same dream.
That is the most clear way.
Right.
I've done dreamwalking experiments with people, and what we did was we would set a range of dates, and not a specific date, but that between, March 1st to May 5th, we were going to engage in these experiments, and we would each keep notebooks. And I would write down, what days I was doing what and what I remembered. And Casey, I call him Casey in all my books, Casey would write down his stuff. And at the end of it, we would compare and see if we had hits on what days. It is something that I strongly suggest that people work with partners on for verification. Because dreams are really complicated things. And the more you think about something in the waking world, or if you start focusing on something, fixating on something, it's going to appear in your dreams just by the nature of consciousness.
Right.
And so you can start, priming yourself to visit someone, and you probably will have a dream about them. They will appear somehow in your dream, but it may not be an actual psychic contact.
Unless, of course, that person contacts you the next day and says, hey, I had this dream, and this is crazy, and how did you do this, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then that is very helpful because there's a certain feel, in my experience, to an actual dream walk that is different from a standard dream. I have a couple of different types of dreams, and all of them have a different feel for what they are. There's precognitive dreams that have a different feel and flow to my brain is just kind of like spitting crap out for the night.
Sure.
Or, treating me to some epic panoramic story.
Okay.
I have really vivid dreams one way or the other. Dream walking, especially if somebody else is coming to me, it tends to stand out fairly significantly, and this was backed up by the research at the Maimonides Institute, where when someone was telepathically communicating to someone in their dreams, the receiver tended to remember that dream because there was material that was foreign to their mind inserted in the dream.
Oh, okay. No,
it was easier to remember because it stood out. It was different. And this is one of the kind of downsides if you're a practice dream walker and you start to do it unconsciously. As the sender, you are less likely to remember it unless you train yourself really well than you will remember it if you're the receiver, or at least wake up and really notice it. You'll remember your dreams if you've trained yourself to do so, but it might not stand out as much because as the sender, it's your dream. It's your dream space. You're in control. So you don't have all of these really unusual keys to kind of trigger, that one really stands out.
Sure.
The main trigger would be the other person,
right,
who is going to function in a way that is not typical to your dream space because they're an actual sentient, free-willed being that just happens to be meeting you in the realm of dreams.
Well, we have to take our second break. When we come back, we're going to have about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Let's see if we can give a quick little nugget of information of how people can start to learn to dream walk, and we'll tell them how to get your book. You're listening to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show with our guest and author of Psychic Dreamwalking, Explorations at the Edge of Self, Michelle Belanger. We'll be back with more right after this.
Are UFOs real? Does Bigfoot exist? Was Emily Rose really possessed? Who is the next American Idol?
She bangs, oh baby, when she moves,
Thank you.
wasted by the way
Thank you.
We try to answer these questions and more each week on The Darkness on the Edge of Town. If it weren't for ghosts and aliens, these guys wouldn't be getting any action at all.
Yeah, baby!
I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Welcome back to The Darkness on the Edge of Town with Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis.
And welcome back to the show. You're listening to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show with our guest, Michelle Belanger. We're talking about psychic dream walking. Now, let's talk about people that are interested in trying to start to experiment with this. First of all, they could pick up their book if they go to our website at darknessradio.com, click on the show tab. If you click on the book, it'll take you directly to Amazon so you can order your copy. And if people want to get in touch with you, Michelle, how can they get in touch with you? We'll make that mention real quick.
You want to email Glenarvon, GLENARVON at gmail.com, or go to my website, which is my first and last name. And if you can't find my website or spell my last name, honestly, just Google Michelle and Vampire, and I'll come up for the first 15 pages.
Okay. All right. Well, see, that's a good thing to know. So we've got you there. Now, how can people, aside from buying the book, how can we get people started tonight that want to start testing this and trying it until they can get a copy of the book and really learn how to do this?
There are two ways to dreamwalk. One is from the complete sleeping state, from lucid dreaming. That requires a fairly decent knowledge of lucid dreaming and an ability to remember your dreams. For a down and dirty technique, the hypnagogic state, or basically the borderline state between waking and sleep, either as you are descending into sleep or ascending from sleep after you've had like a full 8 hours. You can use this state because it's a point at which your current consciousness, your everyday consciousness, starts to slip into that subconscious and unconscious realm, and yet you maintain a certain level of control. This borderline state is used for a lot of astral projection as well. I believe Robert Monroe uses it as a gate to the vibratory state, where you actually are able to project that body outward. And very simply, get comfortable and be comfortable with the space where you're going to be doing this, usually your bed. And hey, it's okay if you get too comfortable, because if you fall asleep, you are likely to also find yourself in a dream where you can dreamwalk. But for the first few experiments, I'm going to recommend actually getting a full night's sleep and setting a day aside where you can sleep in. Once you wake up, stay in bed and stay in that sort of like, I'm sleepy, I'm comfortable. Keep the dreams that you were just dreaming in mind. Try not to let go of those threads. I'm sure everybody's noticed if they jump right out of bed, hit the shower, whatever they were dreaming was clear in their mind while they were in bed, but the minute they're in the shower, it's like it's literally gets washed down the drain.
Right.
So wake up, remain in that state, don't move yourself out of your bed, and remain comfortable and relaxed, and concentrate on the dreams that you were just dreaming, and use that as like a lifeline, as a tether that will lead you back into the dream state. Allow yourself to relax your consciousness so you are not as physically conscious of everything around you, and almost go to sleep. And it would be a balancing act so that you don't go completely asleep.
Mm-hmm.
As you are retaining this sort of very, very open state in your mind, and you are retaining the sense of the dreams that you were dreaming, actively begin to construct a dream. Actively put yourself, as if you were dreaming, in a space that is comfortable for you. For me, it's sort of like this field with a tree and the moon and kind of twilight, because I prefer night to day. Big shock that.
Right.
And be very visual with it. Construct it as thoroughly as you can. Let it appeal to all of your senses. And once you have a solid sense that you are in this space, as you are simultaneously laying in bed, in that space, then think of a person that you would like to reach out and contact. and keeping the sense of that person, how they feel when you're talking to them, how they feel when you're around them, the sense of their energy. Kind of call that to mind and keep that in the back of your mind. And as you are thinking about that person, construct a gate, a door. It can be a well. It can be a cave that you walk through. Some method that is going to let you take this little space that you've just created and cross out of it to that person. For me, I have a gate, and it's like it has a mirror, almost like if you've seen Stargate, that sort of shimmery thing.
Oh, sure.
And I will stand in front of that and call the person to mind and see them on the other side, as if through kind of that shimmery veil. And as I'm seeing them through the other side, focus very intently on the sense of their energy, the sense of having them around, the way I feel when they are close and when we're communicating. I call the sound of their voice to my mind, and I think their name. And as I'm standing in front of that, I think intently about them and call them by name. And basically, from this place, will yourself to part through that gate to where they are at.
Now, does it have to be somebody you know? I mean, can I dreamscape into Kate Beckinsale's, mind? If because I like her as an actress. She's somebody I'm interested in. I'd like to get to know in a dreaming way.
It seems to work best
if you have some kind of connection.
If you have a pre-established connection, if at least you are familiar with the person's energy, because that almost acts as a tether, as a lifeline to that person.
Sure.
It's a link that you have.
Okay.
If it's somebody that you've never, ever met before, it's a lot harder to zero in onto, let's say, their frequency in the dream space.
What's the frequency?
All you're doing, the dream frequency, all you're doing is creating a conceptual doorway to walk to where they are at. And you're less crossing space as you are moving from your subconscious, and think of it literally as diving into the collective unconscious, going underwater for a little bit, and you're surfacing back into where they're at.
All right. So that's kind of the way to start off with it? Okay.
That's the best way to start off with it. Keep a journal, keep notes on what you're doing, what images stand out to you, and date it. Be as conscientious with that as possible so that you can have verification. So when you do have hits, you recognize what those feel like, as opposed to when you're sitting there and just basically doing guided imagery and consciously creating this person in your space.
Okay. All right. Now,
moving from...
So you always recommend the dream journals are a good thing to keep by you at all times?
I think with just about any paranormal stuff that we're experimenting with, especially when we are building our experience with things, it is good to keep notes and keep good track of the time and the date, because verifying it really helps us build objectivity and the ability to analyze and properly judge what is real and what is our imagination. Because a lot of people who get into this, we really want to have experiences.
Right.
And it's not helpful if we delude ourselves. And the mind is really capable of whipping some stuff up just because you want to see it.
That's true.
And
right.
It is easy with pareidolia and other things where if you're really looking for something, you can start to look at just a chaotic image of clouds and start to see a face.
Right. Matrixing, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to build a credible record so you know and can verify what's really going on and can learn to distinguish in your particular experience what is just your imagination, what is just some quirk of your consciousness, or what is an honest-to-goodness experience. So, yeah, I'm a huge advocate of keeping notes.
All right, very cool. Now, is this something, how long does it take for people, now, like me, I have lucid dreams, I'm very aware of this. How long would you think it would take somebody like me as opposed to, my mom who does not have lucid dreams and doesn't remember her dreams often?
I've done workshops where people have gotten a hit in the first try. And those are often people like you who are very vivid dreamers, who have very lucid dreams. I would say for somebody who is a vivid dreamer, who is already experienced with dreaming and lucid dreaming, a couple of weeks. If you are someone who has a hard time remembering their dreams, the borderline state is the best place to start to try to do this, because otherwise you're going to have to put a lot of time into first paying attention to your dreams, keeping a dream journal, because that helps you to remember your dreams. And the more you focus on your dreams, the more you start to dream more vividly. And that's going to be several weeks of work minimum itself. And then the whole process of learning how to lucid dream. Robert Monroe, Carlos Castaneda are a couple of authors that you could look into their work to find some tips for lucid dreaming and how to really bring that. Dr. Raymond Moody, I believe, as well. So, couple of months. Yeah.
Wow, good Lord. Are you channeling Mr. Ed?
I think so.
Well, Wilbur.
It's a habit I picked up from my uncle when I was little, sorry. Thinking out loud and, yes, channeling horses.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'd say as long as a couple of months for somebody if dreaming is not something that they focused on before.
Okay. All right, so but this is something that is very within our realm to do. You think that anybody can do this?
Yeah, I think anybody can do it. I think really most of our hang-ups are we often think that we can't do it, we don't try. I have a couple of friends who are astral projectors, and they've had a hard time sort of transitioning from that skill to dream walking because they're so accustomed to going out in order to travel that going in it's sort of switching gears to a level that they aren't completely good at wrapping their brains around just yet.
Right.
So they end up going in that borderline state and just astral projecting. Dream walking for me was a fairly significant thing because for the longest time I just could not astrally project at all. I actually believed that I couldn't. And of course, just to make a liar out of me, after I published the book, I had 2 spontaneous experiences where I did. I can't control it. Like, I can't do it consciously still.
Right.
But apparently, if I'm, really bent out of shape about missing my airplane in the morning, I will get out of bed and check my radio without actually getting out of bed.
Very cool.
My little clock radio.
Now, this book is available everywhere right now, right?
Yeah,
Psychic
Barnes
Dream
and
Walking.
Nobles, Borders, all of that.
All right, great. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you again for spending time with us. We'd love to have you back on again in the future to discuss more. Again, the name of the book is called Psychic Dreamwalking, Explorations at the Edge of Self. And you can check out her direct website by going to Michelle Belanger, BELANGER.com. And you'll be able to read about Michelle there, about the events that she's doing and the books that she's published. Michelle, thanks a lot for your time this evening. And thank you all for tuning in to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. We'll be back next week with a new live show talking about trance mediumship with our good friend, Mr. Chris Fleming.